Good morning. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sean. When Monine asked me a couple of months ago to speak to you, I thought, would a bunch of designers really be interested in one person's prediction of the future? And I asked her, Monine, should I challenge their curiosity or challenge their intellect? And she opted for the latter. So, yes, a part of my presentation will be about some predictions, some things that we can expect in the next 100 years. Why? Because it's far safer for a futurist to predict in the next 100. But what I really want to talk about is why it's becoming so extremely difficult to predict in the near term. And with that context in mind, I'm going to spend approximately 50 to 60% of my presentation on a different view or a different viewpoint of looking at reality. And that will, in essence, be the focus of my presentation. So without further ado, the question was, what will the future look like in an unpredictable world? A very interesting author by the name of William Gibson said that the future already happened. It's just unequally distributed. And I normally keep my students busy with this for close to an hour. I won't do it to you, I promise. But what we normally expect in the normal distribution curve aren't normally the futures that we create. It's normally those that challenge the status quo, where the future is unequally distributed. In some places, the future happens before it happens here, and sometimes it's the other way around. But the most important thing is that within the view of the future, it's not about predicting the future. It's about talking about what could happen. Someone would normally come up to me and say, so Peter, what will the future look like? And I say, I don't have a clue. They say, but hold on, you're a futurist, aren't you? I said, yes, but what I do is I take a look at two things. Firstly, I take a look at the future that could be. What are all the opportunities that is available in this fast-changing social and technological landscape? And once we have a very good understanding of what those changes are, only then can we decide what the future should look like for your company. And that could only happen through business model design. In essence, it's not about creating the future, it's about co-creating the future. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, what will the future look like? Seeing that I was sold as a futurist, I thought I'd give you a couple of ideas. In the next 100 years, we will become the author of our own evolution. We'll move into the fifth epoch of human evolution, and in that way, we'll start changing the DNA that constitutes who we are. We'll start merging with intelligences other than our own. And that will be a reality in the next 100 years. We also will start moving from a type 0 civilization to a type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. So Kardashev, a Russian physicist in the 60s, defined our evolution as based on the energy that we utilize. So if we keep on burning things on the planet, we'll run out of it at some point in time. But with the dissipated energy falling in the atmosphere on the planet, we'll be able to harness this. And that might take us into a type 1 civilization. I would encourage you to take a look at the Kardashev scale, which directly led to the first 5 minutes of Space Odyssey 2001 being cut. But that's a story that you could look up on the internet. The key challenge is that within the next 2 decades, we'll get a far better understanding not only of who we are as a species, but who we are as humans, because we'll start digging into the human brain. The Big Brain Project, currently a massive project in Europe, will start changing how we look at ourselves. The question comes up, will we be able to record our dreams in the future? Now, the next clip I'm going to show you is a neural network that were hooked up to an individual as he looked at visuals on a screen. And after training this neural network for close to about 2 hours, they then asked the computer to ignore the visuals and try to reconstruct the images only out of the brain patterns that it could record. And this was the result. This happened about 4 years ago. So, will we be able to record our dreams in the future? I think we would. So, what we are seeing is wonderful technology that is changing and shaping the way we look at the universe and how we look at ourselves. These are the predictions of what might happen in the next 100 years. At what point will they change into reality? We truly don't know. Another question is, when will we master fusion? Not splitting atoms, but merging them. In essence, mimicking the chemical patterns we see in the sun. And that's ITER. currently being built in Europe. So very soon, we will mimic the reactions that happens on the sun, and through that, hopefully, create an alternative energy source for humanity. Most of you should know this. This is normal, boring stuff you can Google. Any futurist would normally talk about these things. The key challenge, however, is predicting the future in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the real challenge. And that's really the focus of my presentation today. A couple of years ago, a person by the name of Stephen Wolfram wrote a book. He called it A New Kind of Science. Within it, he looked at the mathematics that describe our physical universe. I'm going to utilize some of that science and make it applicable on how we manage our daily lives and how we create things in the world of design. So we're going to talk about a new kind of management science. And for us to do so, unfortunately, I've got to introduce you to a couple of new words. There's about 25 words that will give you a good basis of the world of complex adaptive systems. I'm going to focus on about 8 of them in the time we have available. But the most important thing we have to realize is that the universe around us is made up of 3 ontologies. The ontology of order, where the cause and effect relationship is predictable and repeatable. In this world, the agents in the network are tightly constrained, either by physical rules or by imposed rules we put on them as humans. We have a second ontology, the ontology of chaos. This is the world where there's no constraints on the agents in the network. And then we have a third ontology, the ontology of complex adaptive systems. In this world, the constraints are changeable. It changes as the agents change, and as the agents change, so does the constraints. In other words, that's how nature operates. For the past 400 odd years, we've been married to this one ontology, this ontology of predictive physics. If I take this piece of paper and I let it go, what will happen to it? Let's see how good you are at predicting the future. I've got a piece of paper. I'm going to let it go. What's going to happen to it? Are you sure? Can we bet on that? Same bets we had on the Springbok game, right? Okay, you got that one right. Let me try it again. If I let this go, what will happen to it? Are you sure? Someone's paying attention. Okay, no. I thought it would go sideways, then flip over my back, and then fly in that direction. What would happen to this if I let it go in space? What would happen to this if I let it go on the top of the Empire State Building? You see, the moment additional forces start playing in on this world of ours, it becomes extremely difficult to predict. So in physics, we normally ensure that the universe doesn't have any impact on that element of prediction. And we're bloody good at that. The problem is that that one view of reality gives us a very limited view of what reality is truly like. And that's going to be my challenge today, to introduce you to some new mindsets that are challenging this age-old idea of predictability. This is where it all came from. We have a certain action, and that action leads to a specific result, and we can predict it. And this is a wonderful way of looking at the universe. We're actually bloody good at this, because this clockwork universe means that whatever actions we take, we can in some way predict where it will end up. We are so good at this that we can launch a spacecraft. After 10 years flight, it landed on an asteroid. That's how good we are in harnessing the forces of physics. Unfortunately, this mindset has also permeated all of life's domains. For us to understand the whole, we have to understand the parts. And if we understand the working of the parts and we add them all together, we understand the working of the whole. This reductionist mindset that we can analyze or solve problems through reductionism, that is at the core of the problem. Because we started utilizing this mindset and we started thinking we could manage organizations in the same way. We will give each person in the organization certain key performance indicators and key performance areas, and we will make sure that their remuneration is linked to these actions. And then magically we think it'll get to this specific objective that we magically thought of a year ago. General Electric was the first company in the world that implemented a performance review system on key performance indicators. They scrapped that 2 months ago. Absolutely useless. Why do the rest of us do it? Because everyone else does. We're at the cusp of an entire new view of reality. And slowly but surely, everyone is catching up. The important thing is that this reductionist mindset doesn't work very well in the world of biology. Neither is it very good at predicting the future. These are two water wheels. They're starting to turn, and their initial position is minutely different. After a few turns, so if you take a look at the amount of water coming into the system, it's far more than what the water wheel can handle. So after a few turns, it becomes completely erratic. And not only does it become erratic, it becomes unpredictable, because your initial starting state was slightly different to the other one. So if I use a simple water wheel, and I put more information into the system and what it can handle, and it becomes completely unpredictable, do you have an idea what's happening in the world of business and in the world of the economy? Unpredictability is part of our lives. And yet, because we master all of the elements or the theories of physics, we somehow thought that we can predict where the future will head. The problem runs deeper, far deeper than this. This is what J.C. Trichet, governor of the ECB, said 2 or 3 years ago. He fundamentally said that the models we created to understand reality started breaking down. The models were simply not strong enough to look at or to handle the fluctuations that were coming into it. This is Lord Turner, the chairman of the UK FSA. This was a headline 2 months ago. The European Central Bank started quantitative easing, and guess what happened? Exactly the opposite of what they expected. The problem is this, that when we take a look at reality, there's a tremendous amount of complexity in it. And to reduce that amount of complexity, we create models in order to make life understandable. Now, the first thing I know about human nature is that we do not optimize. We simply satisfy. If you think that human decision-making is based on rational thinking, think again. Humans normally do first pattern recognition. So for the last 20-odd years, I've been giving technology strategy classes at Northwest University. And what you normally do is you give the students a Harvard business case study. And then they argue about what direction the company should go into. And then magically you would pull out one of these little models and say, look at this model. Now look at your case study and apply this model to the case study. And magically the correct answer would pop up. Oh boy. For the next 4 weeks, those poor students would then use that model to destroy all their businesses. Because then some students would come back and say, Mr. Geldenhuys, thank you so much for that model. It helped me so much. And I said, hold on for a moment. What business are you in again? No, we do logistic freight into Africa with airplanes. I said, hold on. The model I've given you is when you try and break a new innovation into the market, you can't simply just use a model wherever you think it's prudent. That's the key thing. Every single model we create in the management science field is wrong. I can prove any model wrong in about 20 seconds. All models are wrong. Sometimes they're useful. Let's go for a quick recap in terms of this world of reductionism. The important thing is this. Werner Heisenberg said, we have to remember that what we observe is not nature in itself, but nature exposed to a method of questioning. And that's the key challenge. We don't teach complex adaptive systems at school. Sometimes we don't even teach it at university. Yes, this is a hidden part of who we are. Complex adaptive systems is a far better way of modeling complexity than anything else. And I think in the next couple of years, management science, as well as a variety of other sciences, will start borrowing from the world of anthropology, virology, evolutionary biology, in order to understand how you react in a fast-changing and unpredictable environment. So let me introduce you into this interesting context. Predicting the future is not really that simple. The focus is not on what should be, but on what you can co-create. And that only could come up by looking at a different view of reality. So let's take a look at some of these words. And the first word I want to introduce you to is a word called the fitness landscape. Now imagine viruses competing for dominance in a specific space. Imagine technology ideas or technology standards in Silicon Valley competing for dominance. Imagine pop songs competing for dominance. This is an interaction where the agents change, and as the agents change, so does the constraints. This fitness landscape has got a couple of key characteristics. So let's take the fitness landscape, flip it around on its head, and use it the narrative landscape, and let's give it a couple of interesting characteristics. Firstly, we have valleys. These valleys we call strange attractors. So what does a strange attractor do? Your temperature in your body, 37.2 degrees centigrade, is a strange attractor. The moment you get cold, your muscles start shivering, and your temperature then centers around the strange attractor once again. If you get warm, you start sweating. Females, not really sweating, but they perspire far more. But then, once you start sweating, the temperature of your body falls back to 37.2 degrees centigrade. Any minute change to the system doesn't really change it. So the idea of the butterfly effect, small little change here, creating a hurricane somewhere else, that's nonsense. Because within a strange attractor, once the valley has formed, you don't really move it out of it. A couple of years ago, we couldn't predict what would be the dominant operating system on mobile phones. 2008, 2009, no one could make that prediction. The fitness landscape was completely different. And yet 5 years later, we see that Android is a very strong valley, as is iOS. It becomes extremely difficult changing the fitness landscape. So it boggles the mind that BlackBerry and Windows and Nokia and Samsung is even trying to create a new operating system. The valley has formed. The third word is boundary conditions. And the important thing with a boundary condition is that any minute change might push it into a completely different landscape. This is where the butterfly effect is extremely important. This is where a new technology standard arises, and we don't really know what will be the key driving force that will make that the de facto standard. And that is, in essence, what the fitness landscape teaches us. Firstly, it teaches us that the techniques that made you successful in one market is not close to being sufficient to make you successful in another market. And Peza was extremely successful in Kenya. Vodacom spent close to about 500-600 million trying to make it successful here in South Africa. It didn't work. Why? The fitness landscape is completely different. You are at a unique position in this fitness landscape, and to reach one set objective means that you have to use completely different methodologies. Most management consultants go around the world and say, we've done research on the top 100 most innovative companies in the world, and they have the following 10 characteristics. And if you implement the following 10 characteristics in the same way, then you too will be innovative. What a lot of crock. The important thing is that we need to learn that the fitness landscape is in essence defining what is happening in our industry right now. The other important thing is that the dominant attractors have formed. Once they've formed, it makes it extremely difficult to create new standards within it. And then one of the most important things is that your business DNA is far more important than where you're heading. You see, management theory says understand where strategy is and then create a specific point you need to go to. And if everyone understands that directive, then everyone will be successful. That's really a lot of nonsense, because your business DNA is really critical. How agile are you in order to react to changing environments? How strong or resilient are you in terms of in the face of change? That becomes far more important than some ad hoc predictive environment in the future that you may or may not reach, or that may change in the next 2 months. So, what does this all teach us? There's a couple of important elements. The fourth word I want to introduce you to is a context of acceptation. So what is acceptation? Acceptation is a specific skill that has been developed for a specific purpose. And then, at a certain point in time, that specific skill or purpose is reconfigured for something completely different. In a way, we've seen, or we realized, that dinosaurs developed feathers to keep them warm and for sexual display. And then at some point in time, one dinosaur decided to glide from one tree branch to another tree branch. And out of that, flight emerged. And that's where birds come from. Feathers were completely redefined for a different purpose. That's called acceptation. Let me give you a couple of examples. In Thailand, there are the yearly floods, which last for about a week or so. And the Thai people know of this, and then they go and find place for their cars. They go park their cars on a higher spot, and when the floods then dissipate, they just bring their cars back from these high spots. But with growing GDP figures in Thailand, it becomes extremely difficult to find a parking spot for your car. So there's one individual had a big living room couch delivered the previous day. And he decided to pull his car into this big bag, tied it up, the floods came and the floods left, and his car was fine. And almost overnight, he started a cottage industry in selling bags for your cars. So all over Thailand, you will find a bag hanging on the garage wall for the yearly floods. Acceptation. The other word I want to introduce you to is self-organization. So if we take a look at an anthill, this was filmed here right in South Africa, a termite. And if we take a look at the size of a termite and make it the size of a human, that would be the size of New York. It has one of the most efficient traffic management systems, food distribution systems, air ventilation systems. It has nurseries where they rear their young. They've got garbage disposal units. If there's a break in their structure, there's emergency response units that react to that. Yet there's no centralized control. None whatsoever. Very similar to how Amazon manages its staff. They've got no managers. They just do what they need to do. A completely different mindset to what we've been taught at university and at the School of Predictive Physics. Self-organizing system is but one example. In terms of design, what does it mean? Well, the traditional mindset is we want someone to lay out a landscape for us. So let's get an expert in that won a couple of awards, and he will give us the layout of the garden. That's the old mindset. The new mindset is plant grass. Then see where people walk. Once you've determined where their walkways are, that's where you put the walkways. Self-emergent systems. Really that simple. Because in different countries with different cultures, people will react differently. In terms of emergence, there's this wonderful example of traffic management systems. You either have two concepts, a centralized control system, where you have traffic lights that guide all traffic, or you have stop streets that create massive backlogs. So this was a unique experiment in Swindon, United Kingdom. So it has got a big highway to the north, Intel EU headquarters to the south, big school over there, shopping mall over there. Becomes extremely difficult because you can never predict where the next traffic flow will come from. And if you have a centralized control system, it just leads to backlog. So what the council did was, they first of all started by changing the boundaries. So they said, let's see how individuals will use this. So they created flexible boundaries, and they looked at the traffic patterns coming into that circle. And once after a few weeks, it optimized, and then they actually changed the boundaries and solidified them, and at that point only did they start painting the boundaries. It's actually quite simple, because you come in on the left-hand side, you then go around the circle, go around another circle, and out you go in the destination where you're heading towards. The fourth, and that's the whole idea in terms of boundaries. But then you also have identities. So if you're a local, that's how you do it. That's the yellow arrow. But if you're a tourist, you'll go around the edges. So our identities within this complex spaces is also quite important. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you a very practical way of understanding the concepts behind complex adaptive systems. It's a different mindset, moving away from expert to emergent realities. This is in essence the challenge, moving from command and control to self-organizing systems, from predictive to adaptive, from planned to emergent, from robust to resilient, and from complicated to complex. How do we act in these systems? Well, acting is very difficult because if you manage innovation or innovative ideas, it becomes very difficult to do something in an unpredictable space. So here's one of the key challenges. We spoke about some new developments that we can't predict. I don't think I'm going to have time, and it's a bit of a shame because I brought along a little virtual reality headset. And at tea time, all of you that are interested, I'll show you how it works. I wanted to put Sean on stage and put him into a virtual reality space and make him look stupid as he looked at all the fishes swimming around him. You don't need a machine. This one is electronically induced. The difference between virtual reality and reality is the amount of data. That's it. So very soon, we're going to have an absolute catfight regarding standards in the virtual reality space. We're going to start seeing different types of reactions to them. This is, I think, the closest video clip I could find to explain what it looks like.
What is a place? Dad, I just need you to look at this. Does it look weird? A secret place. Where nothing is impossible. You're not seeing this? Yes, stop it!
Well, that's exactly what it feels like. So over tea time, you can grab hold of my goggles and get an idea of where it's heading. But this will have a huge impact on design. It'll give someone an idea to walk around in a house before the house has even been built. It will create emergent reactions. So you will have a set design and then your client will come in, look at the house and say, I don't like that. And you wouldn't really like these changes. But that is going to be part and parcel of the emergent mindset to allow self-organizing principles to change your design. So virtual reality, watch out for the space. Selling homes and creating homes and designing homes, a completely new ballgame. Talking about new ballgames, you'll be able to sell cars, although they haven't even been launched yet. And quite interesting is that in about 3 months' time, we anticipate the Nokia Ozo to be launched, which will enable us to have 5 or 6 television cameras, maybe even 12, centered around a sports stadium. And then, as you see your team scoring a try on the other side, you simply put a pair of goggles on and you will be in that location. And you look at all the fans around you and you'll say, oh, that was a cool one, wasn't it? You'll be able to sit in Oslo and you'll be able to attend a live concert here in South Africa. Yes, you need a 100 megabit per second fiber line for all of this wonderful technology, but that's what they're rolling out right now. So what we're seeing is that you will be able to immerse yourself into sport events. Or you can even shift your position while you're sitting at the game yourself. Some of the things we anticipate by 2020. So what elements do you need to take cognizance of? Firstly, computers that you can talk to and that will talk back to you is already a reality and it will grow. Take a look at the Amazon Echo. You'll need to start developing homes based around audio where you can talk to your computer. So the day where you think your intelligent computer is years off, it's not. You can buy that for about $170 and it's an artificial intelligent agent for your house. You can ask it almost anything. We're going to start seeing design centered around green cars, where your car is charged late at night from the solar array on your roof. You're going to start seeing tiles or solar tiles which look like normal tiles. You're going to look at geothermal energy conservation, where you tap the energy out of the earth and use heat pumps in order to heat your house. A variety of key changes is coming your way. You might even have to design for home delivery so that someone can deliver something at your house while you're not there. These are some of the changes that are changing our world and also opening up entire new landscapes. These are some ideas. But not only will our personal lives change, the world around us will change as well. Wonderful image of London. We anticipate of Moscow and of Paris. That's the tourist brochures. What it really looks like is that. So we anticipate that by 2025, these cities will come up with a new law. And they'll simply say, no person-driven cars allowed in the city centre. If your car can't drive itself, sorry, it won't be allowed in the city centre. So in the morning, your car will come in, drop you off at work, and then you'll tell your car, now be a nice productive car, pick up 3 people on your way out where you park 20 kilometers outside the city centre, because it's so expensive to park it inside. And then your car will bugger off and pick up 3 other people. And then you think to yourself, you know, no, don't go park, just drive around and pick people up, would you? Please, I need a bit of extra cash. And then you'd come up with the idea of saying, do we really need to have our own car? Because other people will buy the cars and we just climb into their cars and just pay for the use of it. By 2025, we'll start seeing a massive change in city centres in the developed world, where parking lots will be demolished. It will be turned into accommodation units and into workspaces. There will be no cars or no parking for cars in city centres because it's simply too expensive. Some of the elementary insights in this fast-changing world of ours. How do you act in this world of change? Well, there's a number of key insights. Firstly, we have to realize how we do it currently. We look at a problem, we've seen that we've had this problem before, and we react on it. We sense, we categorize, and respond. My computer's not switching on this morning, what do? I check the plug. We sense, we categorize, and respond. That's what we do as humans. In the complicated space, we sometimes can't make the link. We bring an expert in, and through reductionist analysis, we can come up with a solution. At university, I studied engineering, and then my fellow hostel members came in at 3 o'clock in the morning while I was writing exams and made a hell of a drunken ruckus. So I decided I'll swap all the taps around in all the showers. Now, depending on the time of the day when you do take a shower, you never really know how long you have to wait for the hot water to arrive. I made a minor change. It took the entire hostel 4 days to figure out I made one change to the system, because in this world, the cause and effect relationship is separated over time and space. You sense, you analyze, you respond. But in the world of complexity, you never know what the outcome will be of your actions. So what you need to do there is a completely different mindset. You probe, you sense, you respond. You probe to see what the changes will be. You see what those changes, what impact they have on the market, and then you respond. That's how the world of politics works. You never really know what the outcomes will be. I'm wrapping up. We talk about drivers, and drivers mean we anticipate what the outcome will be. In the world of complexity, we talk about modulators. We modulate something, but we don't really know what the outcome will be in this dynamic space. Then we utilize very good sense-making capabilities. Probe, sense, respond. In terms of sensing, it's not one project that will not fail. You create multiple safe-to-fail projects, and if one of them fail, because they will, it's safe to do so, contained within the risk matrix. And we start talking about new sense-making tools. Forget about surveys. The best way to get an insight into how people really think is to ask them how they think about something based on stories. What are the stories they tell? Narrative inquiry. Here's some examples of narrative inquiry, and it also can create things we call fitness landscapes or narrative landscapes. Again, areas of stability where people are satisfied, areas where there's huge instability, and that can change at a moment's notice. The theory behind this is solid. People are utilizing this for anti-terrorist detection systems, looking at new markets, adoption of new technologies. But probe, sense, respond is the way in which you have to react in a fast-changing and unpredictable environment. How do you manage innovation? We dip into the field of probing. Once it works, we solidify it. If we have challenges, we dip into chaos. If we come up with a good solution, we solidify it and make it a good business proposition. This is the world of complex adaptive systems. The one view does not replace the other. As you see in the analogy of the elephant, it's about all these different perspectives working together and giving us a wider view of reality. That's the challenge. It's not about complex adaptive systems replacing the world of physics. It's about opening up your boundaries and creating an entire new way of looking at the world. And that's the true challenge in the world of unpredictable systems. So predicting the future, that depends very much on the focus of your adaptive landscape. And this new kind of management science, it has been with us for years. I'll end off with a 2-minute video clip giving you a brief insight into what this world looks like. You've been given the chance to look at reality in a slightly different way. How far down the rabbit hole do you think you want to go? Thank you so much.